My name is Ayan Malik. I used to believe that love, loyalty, and hard work were enough to build a happy life. For nearly a decade, I lived under the illusion that my marriage was a partnership, two people building a future together, brick by brick. I was wrong. Mira, my wife of 7 years, had a smile that could disarm anyone. She was elegant, sharp, and when we met, full of ambition. We fell in love quickly. People said we were a power couple, that we were destined to go far. And we did, at least for a while. I ran a growing logistics company, often working late nights, traveling for meetings, and putting in every ounce of energy I had to secure a future for us. Mira was a perfect wife on the outside, charming, gracious, supportive. She managed our home, handled our finances, and made all the right moves in front of our family and friends. She always said, "I'll take care of everything here. You just focus on building our future." And I did. I trusted her with everything. My accounts, my passwords, even the keys to my family's investment fund. A trust my late father left behind for our future children. Our neighbor, Zishan, lived just across the street. He was the kind of guy who talked too much, laughed too loud, and always seemed to be around, especially when I wasn't home. I didn't think much of it back then. He and Mira had casual conversations, exchanged recipes, helped each other with errands. He was always polite with me, and I, foolishly, welcomed his presence. Looking back, I miss the signs. The way Myra's phone always seemed turned upside down. The way she pulled away slightly when I kissed her. The nights when she claimed to be too tired, too stressed, or just not in the mood. But I was too consumed by my work and too blinded by trust to question anything. We didn't have children, not for lack of trying. 2 years ago, after multiple failed attempts, I underwent a vasectomy. It was a mutual decision, one that Mira agreed to with surprising ease. She said she was tired of the pressure, that we should enjoy life as it came. I respected that. I respected her. But respect only matters when it's mutual. Love only survives when it's real on both sides. Everything I thought I knew about my life was about to shatter, not in one big explosion, but in slow, gut-wrenching fragments. One small discovery at a time, a missing transaction here, a lie there, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. And then, the one truth I couldn't ignore, Mira was pregnant. That's when the mask slipped. That's when I realized I had built my life on a foundation of betrayal. And that's when I stopped being the man who gave everything and started becoming the man who would take it all back. They say trust isn't lost in a single moment. It unravels thread by thread. That's how it happened with me. The first thread was something small, a strange transaction on our joint account. Mira said she'd paid for some home repairs. When I asked which company, she fumbled for an answer, said she'd have to check the receipt. The receipt never came. I let it go. She was handling the household. Maybe I was just overthinking, but that was just the beginning. More withdrawals followed. Large ones. Always rounded numbers. When I asked again, she gave vague answers. It's for savings. I moved it to a different account. You're always so busy. I didn't want to bother you. Her tone made me feel guilty, like I was the one intruding. So I backed off, but something felt wrong. Her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter or bedside table, was now always in her hand or face down. She smiled less, laughed only when she was texting someone. Sometimes she'd lock herself in the bathroom for over 30 minutes, scrolling on her phone. I told myself it was stress, or maybe she just needed space. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I hated the idea of becoming a paranoid husband. Then came the nights. I'd come home late, exhausted from 12-hour days, and find her already in bed. No dinner waiting, no warmth in her voice, just cold detachment. She'd say, "I'm tired," or "You were late again," or worst of all, "You're always working. What did you expect?" We started living like roommates, polite, distant, going through the motions. But it was Zishan's presence that began to bother me more and more. He was always around, fixing something in our backyard, dropping off extra food his mother had made. I'd find him talking to Mira in the driveway, smiling in that overly familiar way. Mira always said, Oh, he's harmless. But my instinct started screaming otherwise. Still, I didn't accuse. I observed. I started quietly taking note of when Zishan came over. Almost always when I wasn't home. Once, I came home early from work unannounced. Mira panicked when I walked in the door. Zishan appeared 5 minutes later, saying he'd been just leaving. They both acted normal. Too normal. I installed a hidden camera at the front entrance. Just for peace of mind, I told myself. But deep down, I already knew what I was going to find. And then came the moment that ripped the floor from under me. Mira told me she was pregnant. She said it with a trembling smile, tried to make it sound like joy. But I saw the fear in her eyes, the hesitation, the calculation. I froze. Pregnant? I'd had a vasectomy 2 years ago. A secret only Mira and I knew. We'd made the decision together after months of failed fertility treatments, when the stress of it all became too much. She had cried. I had comforted her. We'd made peace with it. Or so I thought. So how could she be pregnant? I didn't confront her right away. I smiled. I hugged her. I told her I was happy. And that night, as she slept beside me, peacefully, with her hand resting on her stomach, I stared at the ceiling with burning eyes. It was no longer suspicion. It was confirmation. This wasn't my child. This wasn't an accident. This was betrayal wrapped in silence. My heart was torn between grief and rage, but my mind was already shifting into something colder, something calculated. I realized then that the woman lying beside me wasn't my partner anymore. She hadn't been for a long time, and that whatever future we had was already gone. Now it was time to gather proof, not for confrontation, but for revenge. For a few days after Myra's pregnancy announcement, I played the role of the loving husband. I smiled, cooked her breakfast, even kissed her goodnight. Every "I love you," she whispered made me sick. But I said it back. I had to. The mask had to stay on until I was ready to rip hers off. Behind the scenes, I was gathering evidence. I started with our finances. I requested a complete transaction history from the bank. Not just a joint account, but the family trust fund my father had left for our future children. Mira had access to it. She had always insisted on managing herself. "I'm better with numbers," she used to joke. She wasn't joking. Over the past year, Mira had siphoned off large amounts from the trust, some labeled as investment transfers, others with no explanation at all. Nearly $90,000 gone. Quietly, discreetly, and systematically. And every transfer went to one account, her private one. I had my lawyer freeze the trust that same day. Quietly, legally. She wouldn't even know it had happened until she tried to take more. Next, I turned to camera footage. The small device I had hidden near the front door caught more than I expected. I watched the clips late at night, my jaw tight, hands trembling. Zishan had been visiting nearly every week, sometimes twice a week, always when I was away, always greeted with a smile and a long hug that lingered too long. One clip showed him entering the house at noon and not leaving until after sunset. Mira hadn't mentioned a single thing about it that day. When I came home that night, she had acted tired, said she had a migraine. I downloaded the footage, dated, time-stamped, unforgivable. But I wasn't done. I contacted a private investigator. I gave him everything, names, addresses, a recent photo of Mira and Zishan. Within 4 days, he returned with hotel receipts, surveillance photos, and location data from a tracking app Mira had once installed on her phone, forgetting it synced to our old shared iPad. She had met Zishan multiple times outside the house, sometimes in broad daylight. She wasn't even hiding it. I also requested a paternity test. Mira was 3 months along. I found a way, through the investigator's connection, to get a sample from her discarded coffee cup and match it with a sample I got from Zishan's trash bin. The results were devastating and conclusive. Zishan was the father. When the envelope came with the results, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat in my study, staring at the paper in silence for hours. A single line repeated itself in my mind like a heartbeat. She chose him. She chose him over everything we'd built, over loyalty, over family, over me. That night, I sat alone in the dark, remembering every small kindness I had shown her, every sacrifice, every dream I had weaved with her at the center, and how casually she had burned it all down. I confronted her the next day. She was in the kitchen, humming softly, making tea, the perfect image of domestic warmth. I placed a paternity test on the counter. Without a word, she glanced down, then up at me, her face freezing. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I said nothing. I just watched her, studied her face, waited for the lie. After a few agonizing seconds, she finally whispered, "Ayan, I can explain." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Explain what, Mira?" I asked, my voice calm but hollow. "Explain how the man who borrows our tools and eats at our table is the father of your child? Or how $90,000 from my father's legacy disappeared into your personal account?" Her legs buckled. She sat down slowly, her hands trembling. I was lonely," she said, barely audible. "You were never home. You were always working." We stopped talking. I made a mistake. I leaned closer, staring her dead in the eyes. "No, Mira, a mistake is burning dinner. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. I pointed to documents. This was a choice. Repeated, planned, covered up." She started crying, saying she was sorry, saying she still loved me, saying she didn't mean to hurt me. But I wasn't there for an apology. I wasn't there for closure. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and said the words I'd been practicing in my head. "You didn't just cheat on me. You took my trust, my money, and my name. And now, Mira, I'm going to take something from you." She looked up confused. "What?" I smiled coldly. "Your peace." Then I walked out, not with rage, not with heartbreak, but with a quiet promise that this wouldn't end with just a confrontation. No, this was only the beginning. After I walked out that day, I didn't go to a friend's house or check into a hotel. I went straight to a small apartment I had rented weeks before, a place Mira didn't know about. The plan had been forming in the back of my mind ever since the pieces began falling into place. I didn't want just to catch her. I wanted her to feel it, slowly, deeply, without warning. They say revenge is best served cold. But mine would be colder than she could ever imagine, because before revenge comes silence. That silence, it's where people begin to lose their grip, to overthink, to panic. That's where I wanted her. I didn't block her number. I didn't file for divorce immediately. I didn't tell anyone. Instead, I disappeared from her life, physically and emotionally. She messaged a few times in the first few days. Just one-word things at first. "Ayan, please, can we talk?" Then the text grew longer. She tried to explain, justify, beg. She blamed me. Then she blamed herself. Then she blamed the pressure of our marriage. I didn't reply. Not once. Silence is a powerful weapon when you've been betrayed. It forces the other person to sit in the ruin they created, unsure when or if the other shoe will drop. In those days, I set everything in motion. I spoke to my lawyer. I laid out all the evidence. The financial theft, the paternity results, the video footage, the bank statements. He was stunned. "You've already built the entire case," he said. "We can win everything." I didn't want revenge through courts alone, but I wanted to make sure that when the blow landed, it would be irreversible. The house was under my name. So was the car. Mira had no source of income. She had lived off me for years, managing money she hadn't earned and betraying the hand that fed her. And now she would pay for it. But it wasn't just about her. I had plans for Zishan, too. I filed a complaint with our neighborhood association. Zishan had violated multiple community codes, including harassment of a resident me, and having unauthorized access to my property in my absence. I had footage, timestamps, and logs. He would face a formal hearing. If found in violation, he could be evicted or blacklisted from the neighborhood. It wasn't a criminal charge, not yet, but it would stain his reputation. And that was just the beginning. Mira, meanwhile, began to unravel. I watched from a distance as she started calling my office, asking for me, I had already told my assistant to say I was out indefinitely. My mother, who adored Mira, started asking questions too. I hadn't told her everything yet, but she sensed a shift. I told her, "You'll know everything soon." She didn't press. 3 weeks passed. During that time, I drained our joint accounts, legally. I canceled her credit cards, all in my name. I had the utilities in the house scheduled to be shut off one by one. Her comfort? Gone. Her financial safety net? Gone. Her silence? Cracking. She finally called from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then came a text. "You're destroying me. Please stop. I'm pregnant. This stress is hurting me." There was again manipulation, as if her condition gave her immunity, as if I hadn't been carrying silent pain for months, as if she could still play the victim in a story she created. But I wasn't going to stop. I was only getting started. I wanted her to wonder every night what I would do next. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, not through shouting or violence, but through carefully measured silence, the kind that drives people insane. And then, when she thought the worst had passed, I would deliver the final blow, not to hurt her body, but to take back everything she thought she had gotten away with. Revenge isn't loud. It's not a burst of screaming or a shattered plate. Real revenge, the kind that lingers, that burns slow and deep, begins with silence, and then it spreads. By the time Mira realized what was happening, she was already surrounded by the collapse I had planned for her. It started with the bank. Her cards were declined at the grocery store. She called the bank and found out the joint account was closed. The savings were gone and all activity had been legally transferred. She messaged me in a panic. I didn't respond. The next day, the house Wi-Fi stopped working. Then the electricity. Then the water. All of it under my name. All of it disconnected. Legally. Mira tried calling the service providers. They told her, politely and firmly, that the account holder had terminated the service. She had no way to reinstate anything without me. I knew she'd go to Zishan, and she did. One afternoon, I parked a block away and watched from a distance as Zishan came to her rescue, bringing groceries, comforting her, pretending to be the knight in shining armor. He looked confident, smug, even. So I moved on to step 2, take away that comfort. Operation, public humiliation. I had compiled everything into a neat digital folder. Videos, screenshots, bank transactions, hotel receipts, the paternity test. Even her texts to Zishan, the ones where she fantasized about leaving Ayan and starting over together. She had written things like, "He'll never know. He trusts me too much. This child is yours, not his, and it's better that way." Better for who? I sent that folder anonymously, not to her, but to people who mattered. To Zishan's fiancé, who lived in another city and had no idea he'd been cheating. To Myra's parents, who had always thought their daughter was a loyal, respectable wife. To our neighbors' WhatsApp group, where everyone pretended to be civil but loved gossip more than oxygen. The fallout was nuclear. Zishan's fiancé left him within 24 hours. She took screenshots, posted them online, and tagged him. He became a laughingstock across his social circles. His family was humiliated, especially when they learned the baby was his. Not mine. Myra's parents? They were stunned. Her father called me, almost in tears, apologizing. Her mother called Mira home, not out of sympathy, but shame. "We didn't raise you like this," they said. As for the neighbors, the same people who used to compliment Myra's grace and elegance now crossed the street to avoid her. They whispered behind her back. Their eyes no longer held admiration, only judgment. Mira tried to get ahead of the narrative. She posted a long, emotional message online. How she was struggling, how relationships are complex, how no one should judge a woman for her mistakes. But the internet never forgets, and receipts don't lie. Legal strike. Then came the final phase, the legal blow. I filed for divorce, citing infidelity, financial misconduct, and emotional distress. My lawyer made sure every document was thorough, factual, and airtight. Mira would get nothing, no alimony, no share of my company, and no access to the trust fund. She tried to fight it. Her lawyer reached out with proposal. Let's settle this quietly. She's pregnant and emotionally fragile. I declined. I wanted a court ruling. I wanted on record that she betrayed me, stole from me, and lied about the paternity of a child she was trying to pass off as mine. And that's exactly what I got. During the hearing, my lawyer presented everything. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern face and no tolerance for lies, was visibly disgusted. Mira sat there in court, bloated from pregnancy, eyes swollen, voice cracking. As she tried to justify her actions, she wept. She apologized. She said she was lost. The judge didn't flinch. She ruled in my favor. I retained 100% ownership of all marital assets, including the house. Mira was ordered to vacate within 30 days. The court noted her infidelity and fraud as grounds for full separation without compensation. When the final gavel struck, Myra's face crumpled. Her world had fallen apart, piece by piece, and now there was nothing left but regret and a child she would raise alone. The final visit a week later, I went back to the house, our former house, to collect the last few items I hadn't taken earlier. I had given Mira notice through the lawyer. She was still there, her belongings half-packed. When I entered, she stood in the living room, silent. Her face was pale. Her eyes, once filled with fire and pride, now looked hollow. You got everything you wanted, she said quietly. No, I replied. I got what I deserved. You got what you earned. She walked toward me slowly, cradling her belly. Do you ever think about what we had? I paused. Yes. And then I remember what you did to it. Tears welled in her eyes. You're not even angry anymore. I said, but anger fades. Now, I'm just free. And I walked out for the last time. Epilogue, Peace reclaimed. Revenge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about restoring balance. It's about taking back control from someone who thought you were too weak to fight back. Mira took my trust. She took my money. She even tried to take my name by using it to protect her own reputation. But I took something she'll never get back. Her comfort, her illusion of invincibility, her peace. As for me, I started fresh. I traveled. I focused on growing my business. And one day, I met someone new, someone honest, someone real. Now, when I look back, I don't feel bitterness. I feel clarity. Because sometimes losing everything you thought you needed is how you finally find what you truly deserve. The final showdown came when I least expected it. It had been 2 months since the divorce was finalized. Mira had moved in with her parents temporarily. Zishan had disappeared from the neighborhood after the scandal. Everything was quiet. Too quiet, in fact. I was working late one evening when my intercom buzzed. My assistant's voice came through, uncertain. Sir, there's someone here to see you. It's your ex-wife. She says it's urgent. I paused. I hadn't seen Mira since the court ruling. Every trace of her had been wiped clean from my life. Legally, emotionally, and digitally. I thought I'd never have to hear her voice again. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I told my assistant to let her in. When she walked into my office, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked drained. Her hair was tied back messily, her clothes loose, her skin pale. The confident, manipulative woman I once knew was now a shell of herself. But I didn't let myself feel pity. She had made her choices. She was living the consequences. She sat down across from me without asking. I need to talk, she said. I don't, I replied, casually closing my laptop. Her eyes flinched at the coldness in my voice, but she continued. I made mistakes, Ayan. Big ones. But I didn't come here to beg you to come back. I know that's over. I want you to know the truth. I leaned back, arms crossed. Go on. She hesitated, then said, Zishan left. As soon as his fiancée dumped him and his family found out, he turned on me. He said he never wanted the baby, never planned to leave her for me. He just wanted what he wanted. And now I'm stuck. I'm 6 months pregnant. No job, No home. No future. I said nothing. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for forgiveness. I just want you to understand that I didn't plan to ruin everything. It just happened. I let the silence stretch before responding. Do you remember what you wrote to him? I asked. He trusts me too much. He'll never know. That wasn't an accident. Mira, that was a plan. She looked down, guilty. Yeah, she whispered. I was stupid, arrogant. I thought I could get away with everything. I thought you'd never stop loving me. That line hung in the air for a moment, and for a second, I felt the old pain threaten to rise. The betrayal, the humiliation, the heartbreak. But it didn't. Not really. It had turned into something else now. Wisdom. Strength. I stood up. This conversation is over, Mira. She looked up, startled. You had your chance. You buried it. I don't hate you. I just don't care anymore. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She nodded and stood to leave. At the door, she turned back one last time. I know you'll move on. You're strong. But me? I'm going to live with what I did for the rest of my life. I didn't respond. I just looked at her. Not with love. Not with anger. With indifference. And that was the final blow she hadn't prepared for. The real victory. People often think revenge is about ruining someone else's life. But the truth is, real revenge is when you heal so deeply, you become untouchable. When the person who broke you no longer has power over your mind, your peace, or your future. That was the final showdown. Not in a courtroom, not with shouting or tears, but in an office, under fluorescent lights, with calm words and a closed heart. I didn't just take Myra's peace. I reclaimed my own. And this time, it was mine completely. It's strange how silence becomes your peace after chaos has ruled your world. Months passed. The storm Mira brought into my life had finally settled into a distant, forgotten echo. The pain, once sharp and consuming, had softened into something quieter, like an old scar you no longer feel, but never forget. I moved out of the city, bought a small place by the coast. Not flashy, not loud, just peaceful. The kind of place where you wake up to birds instead of alarms. Where no one knows your name unless you tell them. Where your past can't follow you unless you invite it. I didn't date for a while. I wasn't afraid of love. I was just learning to love myself again, to trust my own judgment, to feel whole without needing someone else to validate it. Eventually, someone new did come along. She wasn't perfect. She didn't pretend to be, but she was real, gentle, honest, and that was more than enough. We took things slow. She knew I had scars, and she never asked me to hide them. She just made sure I never had to fight alone again. I told her everything, not to seek sympathy, but because I wanted to build something with truth, not secrets. She listened, she didn't judge, and she stayed. That's how I knew she was different. As for Mira, I never heard from her again. I sometimes wonder how her life turned out, if the child is healthy, if she ever grew from what she did, if she ever truly felt remorse. But I never reached out, and she never tried again, either. Some stories don't need sequels. Some wounds don't need reopening. Forgiveness? I found that too. But it wasn't for her. It was for me. Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I refused to carry her betrayal into my future. I left it where it belonged, in the past. Final thought. She took my trust. She took my money. She took my name and tried to destroy what I built. But I took back my power. I took back my voice. And most of all, I took back my peace. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all.